Okay, now the ayah number 6. Siratal lazina an'amta alayhim. So the first word is sirata. So if you look at the i'rab or status of the word sirata, we have seen this word here, sirata. The only difference is that was as-sirata and this is sirata. You can see that both of them are matching in terms of their status, being singular, being masculine, and the only thing you might think of that they are not matching in terms of the common and proper. Inshallah, we'll see that they are actually matching in this sense as well. So sirata and sirata, they are matching. Now we have discussed this thing multiple times that that depending on the context, sometimes we call it badal, sometimes we call it sifa, which is more appropriate in this case, and that if we call it badal, because sirata is not really being described by the word sirata. So it's just a substitution or replacement. So the more appropriate is that we can say that this sirata is badal and this is the mubdal minhu. And we know the concept of mubdal minhu, which simply mean that the one which is being substituted. Okay, so sirata is the substitution and as-sirata is the one which we substituted. Okay, now if you look at this one, sirata, which mean path, allazina, if you, most of us, we know the translation of this verse, path of those people. Did you notice the thing that path of those people, which means that what is coming after sirata is playing the role of mudaf ilay, because this of construction, this is a mudaf ilay construction, which means that this sirata is mudaf and this word allazina is playing the role of mudaf ilay. That is one point. But second point is, we know that allazina or the word allazi, they start a relative clause. So not just this one word will be in the role of mudaf ilay, rather this whole relative clause will play the role of mudaf ilay, right? So allazina is sila. This word allazina is the ism mawsool. I don't know why this is disturbing us. So allazina is ism mawsool. I don't know why this is not working. Okay, and then what will come after that will be the sila. Okay, so an'amta, an'amta, an'amta is fail madi and it is number 7 in the madi chart. An'amta, you favored. In'am mean favor. An'amta, you gave favor. Okay, so this an'amta is fail madi and alayhim is muta'alliq bil fail. So an'amta alayhim is a jumla, complete jumla based on fail madi, right? And this complete jumla in which an'amta is fail and it has file anta, file anta, and alayhim is muta'alliq bil this fail. So an'amta alayhim is a complete jumla of fail madi. It's playing the role of sila. So allazina is some mawsool, an'amta alayhim sila. So right now we can say, for example, that this mawsool and sila together is playing the role of what? Mudaf ilay, because sirata was mudaf and what was going to come after sirata, that word or that sentence, or in this case, this relative clause is playing the role of mudaf ilay. So I am not saying that this whole sentence is technically mudaf ilay. Technically speaking, allazina is mudaf ilay, right? Because sirata mudaf, allazina mudaf ilay. But because the feature of this allazina is, it does not just come on its own, it completes a complete relative clause. So we take mausul and sila together in the role of our mudaf ilay. So sirata mudaf, allazina an'amta alayhim mudaf ilay. So in other scheme, we can write it here that this is mudaf, and this allazina an'amta alayhim is mudaf ilay. So now instead of saying that sirata is the badal, what will we say now? Sirat allazina an'amta alayhim is the badal. Why? Because sirata and next thing are connected together by becoming mudaf and mudaf ilay. Inshallah, before I explain the next part, if you have any question regarding this part, this word ghairi, please pay attention. Now look at the status of word ghairi. We have discussed this point so many times that ghairi mean besides or other than. Beside or other than. Now it's a ism. Okay. Now the point is, it is in jar status, and ism can be in jar status fundamentally for two reasons. Either there is a mudaf before it, or there is a preposition before it. Now, obviously, if you look before ghairi, there's no preposition. Before ghairi, you have the word alayhim. So alayhim, the whole thing is not a preposition. Secondly, before ghairi, you do not have any mudaf. You do have, for example, an'amta alayhim, the mudaf ilay part, but you do not have any mudaf part. So then we have discussed this multiple times. Then the third possibility will be that this word is actually becoming the badal or sifa of something which have came before it. Now the question comes, how would I find out that thing? So the method to find out that thing is that you see that which ism is in jar status before ghairi. Okay, now obviously let's start looking at the whole ayah. Sirata, this word sirata, it's not in jar status, it's in nasab status. Okay, if you look at the word allazina, now I want you to listen this point very carefully. This ism mausul allazi for singular, the one who, or allazina, those who for the plural. You cannot know their status by their look. Their status will be defined by their role, because either they are in rafa or nasab or jar, they will always look the same. And this thing is true about some other asma as well. For example, haza. Haza will always look haza, either in rafa or nasab or jar. How would you know the status of haza? You will know the status of haza by looking at the role of haza in any context. Same is the case with allazi and allazina. They will always look the same, and we will know their status by their role. Now, as we have discussed that this allazina is playing the role of mudaf ilay, right? Because sirata was mudaf and allazina was mudaf ilay, right? And we know the principle that the status of mudaf ilay is always jar, which means that this allazina is in jar status, right? After allazina, the word an'amta is a verb. Okay, so there's only one word in the whole line, siratal lazina an'amta alayhim. You have only one ism that can be in jar status, and that is allazina. Technically speaking, allazina is in jar status. Why? Because allazina is playing the role of mudaf ilay. This will tell us that this ghairi is, and now remember this point, ghairi plays different, whenever ghairi word will come in a sentence, it will play different role. One of its role is, inshallah, we'll see its other roles as well very soon, inshallah. One of its role is that it plays the role of, as it's doing right now, sifa. So ghairi is in jar status because it is playing the role of sifa for this word allazina, right? But obviously allazina is not just one word. Allazina and amta alayhim, whole thing is connected with each other as mausul sila. So actually this ghairi is the sifa for who? For this allazina. So this allazina is mausuf as well. Allazina is a mausul, but it is also mausuf, right? That is one point about ghairi. Now, whenever you will see ghairi, ghairi will perform the role of special mudaf, and what will come after it, that will be mudaf ilay. And that is the reason maghdubi is in jar status, which means that maghdubi is in jar status. Why? Because maghdubi is playing the role of mudaf ilay for ghairi. So ghairil maghdubi. Now, what about this alayhim? Please understand this, inshallah, point, and this is my last point, inshallah, of this discussion. There are some words, some asma, some nouns, they cannot convey their meaning just by themselves. They always need a jar majroor fragment as an integral part of that word. And maghdub is one of those words. Maghdub means recipient of anger. Maghdub means recipient of anger. And we know that from technically it will be basically, I'm saying maf'ul, because maf'ul is the one which receives the action. So this word maghdub, it cannot come on its own. Whenever you want to use the word maghdub, you will always use ala, harf jar ala, and after harf jar, it depends. If you want to mention one person as maghdub, then maghdub alayhi. If you want to mention one female, maghdub alayha. And if you want to mention multiple, maghdub alayhim. So basically, what I'm saying is that there are some words, there are some nouns, whenever they are used in the text, they are used as a combination. So the word itself, and it will take a jar majroor fragment alongside it. So basically, maghdub alayhim, whole thing will play the role of mudaf ilay. So this alayhim is only coming here. Why? Because maghdub is from those words which are always used in combination with harf jar ala. So ghairi is mudaf, special mudaf, and ghairi is special mudaf, and maghdub alayhim is the mudaf ilay. And but this waw is connector, which means that what is coming after the waw is connected with the previous one. So ghairi, special mudaf, al maghdub alayhim, and ad-dallin. Inshallah, I'll explain this law in a minute. So al maghdub alayhim and ad-dallin, both of them together playing the role of mudaf ilay. Why? Because this waw has connected maghdub alayhim with ad-dallin. So ghair was special mudaf, right? Al maghdub alayhim wal ad-dallin. These are the mudaf ilay part. Okay, and this mudaf ghairi, special mudaf, and its mudaf ilay together, what is their role? They are the sifa for who? For allazina. Okay, which means that this last part is also connected with this badal. Why? Because in badal you have sirata as the badal, but sirata was connected with allazina an'amta alayhim, Why? Because sirata was becoming mudaf, allazina an'amta alayhim was becoming mudaf ilay. But at the same time, this ghairil maghdub alayhim waladdallin, it is the sifa for that mudaf ilay. So basically, mudaf ilay, sirata was mudaf, and relative clause was the mudaf ilay. But relative clause is connected with the next thing as mawsuf sifa. So now we will say, by summarizing the whole thing, please pay attention, inshallah, then you can ask your question. Sirata mudaf, allazina an'amta alayhim was mudaf ilay, but allazina an'amta alayhim is mawsuf, and ghairil maghdub alayhim is the sifa. So mawsuf sifa together. Please pay attention. Mawsuf allazina an'amta alayhim and sifa ghairil maghdub alayhim together. Mawsuf sifa together will play the role of mudaf ilay. For who? For sirata mudaf. So in reality, even though the thing is wide spread out, but actually sirata mudaf and rest of the whole thing mudaf ilay, and this mudaf ilay is the badal. For who? For as-sirata, right? And now, what about this law? What about this law? Please pay attention. This is the last point, inshallah. Like I said before, if you simply say ghairil maghdub alayhim waladdallin, that not those people, not those who are the recipient of anger, and not those who are astray. Ad-dallin, those who went astray. Okay, so you don't need the word law. So this law is basically, they explain that this law is extra, zaida, extra. Why? Because without this law, the meaning was clear. So when you bring extra law, it performs the job of emphasis. So this law in this case is performing the role of emphasis, which means ghairil maghdub alayhim. Let's translate the whole thing. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. You guide us to the straight path. Sirat al-lazina anamta alayhim. Path of those whom you gave favors upon. Ghairil maghdub alayhim. Not of those who earned anger. Waladdallin, and not those who went astray. So this law is simply an additional law which was not required to complete the sentence, but when you bring the additional law, it make your expression more emphatic. So now, inshallah, you are more than welcome to ask any of your questions. So let's summarize this last part. Sirata and allazina an'amta alayhim. Sirata mudaf, allazina an'amta alayhim mudaf ilay. And this thing, ghairil maghdub alayhim waladdallin, inside of it, ghair is the special mudaf, and al-maghdub alayhim and ad-dallin, they are in the role of mudaf ilay. So this whole thing is the sifa, and this whole thing is the mawsuf. So sirata mudaf, and the mudaf ilay part has mawsuf and sifa. One more time. Sirata, in a bigger scheme of picture, sirata is mudaf, and allazina anamta alayhim mawsuf, ghairil maghdub alayhim waladdallin sifa. Mawsuf and sifa together. Mawsuf and sifa together are the mudaf ilay for this mudaf. So mudaf and mudaf ilay, they are actually badal. That is the actual title for this last part. It is the badal for this one. But the badal part itself has a bit of construction inside of it. Now, inshallah, you can please look at